are delighted that you're able to join us today. We have a wonderful presentation prepared for you about sensory strategies for home and community. But before we begin, we want to just take care of a few general housekeeping rules. We always like to introduce our in-home parent training team. We are a whopping team of 4, and we all are so happy to be working with you this year. Kimberly, can you hear my, thank you so much. Kimberly Goshi, myself, Megan Walls, and Marty Matta make up our team of 4. And we always like to make sure that everyone is aware of resources that are available to you. We have a fantastic website that we are in the process of updating. We've got a Facebook page too. Hopefully you're receiving our monthly special education newsletters that go out. We also refer to those as the SMORE. We send those out every month with events, activities, upcoming training opportunities like our group parent trainings where we have guest speakers, our wonderful tool time trainings that our team facilitates, as well as additional resources. And don't forget that our fabulous Parent Sanctuary and Lending Library is open to parents. That's located at the Early Childhood School every Friday from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. And you can come there, you can talk with an in-home parent trainer to get suggestions, support, visuals. You can borrow and check out great sensory items. We have all kinds of great sensory resources there that we have tons of books based off of topic and diagnosis too for your personal usage and help. So we hope to see you soon on a Friday at the Parent Sanctuary. And with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our fabulous guest speaker. Miss Tara Town is part of our amazing occupational therapy team here with Frisco ISD, and she's going to talk to us about sensory strategies.
Thank you. And since we're recording, I'm going to go through my slideshow and go over what sensory processing is and some strategies for the community. And then once we're done with the presentation, we will we'll stop recording and you all can ask questions because I know people will have questions, but we don't want those on the recording. So the first thing we're going to talk about just is what is sensory processing. It's the ability to take in, sort out, and respond to the information environment around us. So all of us are sensory beings. We all have different ways in the way our body processes the information around us. The main components of the sensory system are the visual, the hearing, taste and smell, proprioception, vestibular, and the tactile systems. So with visual system, so we all know what vision is, and it's using our eyes to take in information, sort out what that information is, and process that information. So I just kind of put some differences on here. So some people may be very sensitive to bright light. So these are kiddos who like certain classroom lighting may be too bright for them. So they like darker areas outside when you walk out into the sun. Sometimes that's too bright. So that's one of the things we see. Gets easily distracted with a lot of visual stimulation. So it's hard for a kiddo like this to work in a really busy environment. If there's a lot of things on the walls, a lot of movement in the class, those kind of things, they just get distracted visually by all those things. Another one's staring intently at people or objects. So these are the kiddos that give you too much eye contact. So they're just stare until, it can become uncomfortable in social situations sometimes, but they don't necessarily realize they're doing it. It's just, that's how their body, like their vision sometimes takes a little longer to process. Enjoys watching objects spin or move. So we have a lot of kids who have visual stims. where they want to watch something move, whether it's their fingers or like a fidget, and they're really focused on that movement, and that their brain really likes that kind of input. And so sometimes they will do those things to provide that input for themselves, whether it's with their hands or a fidget. Looks at objects outside of their eyes instead of using their central vision. So, and that's not always a sign of a visual deficit, but it can be. But these are the kids that kind of look at everything sideways. So they're not looking straight at you or straight at their paper. They're turned, and they're using their vision a little bit differently than typical. And with hearing, obviously, noise is a big deal. And some of our kiddos do not do well with loud or unexpected noises. Fire drills are a big one. Vacuum cleaners in the home environment sometimes can set kids off. I've worked with kids before that, going to church and it was really loud and the music is loud, and those types of things we've had to kind of work through how that looks for them and their families, because that is a big stressor for them. There's also not just the loud noises, but some people's hearing is just more acute than others, and they really hone in on sounds that the rest of us don't hear. So I used to work with a therapist that could hear the fluorescent lighting. I don't hear that, but she could. And then we have kids that, get distracted by like the refrigerator humming that you may not even notice, but that is bothering them. And they tend to sometimes avoid busy places due to the noise. So it really varies. We do also have kiddos that don't hear as well. So they don't respond to sounds the way that everybody else would. So necessarily, like you say their name a few times and they don't hear you. It's just sometimes they have some auditory processing things going on too, where they're taking in, they hear their name, but they're just not responding because it takes their brain longer to process, oh, hey, someone's calling my name. So those are the kids sometimes you have to repeat things to a few times. Taste and smell, obviously pretty straightforward. So our smell obviously is our nose, and whatever we smell through our nose and how our brain processes that information. Taste is in our mouth and our tongue. Our kiddos that have issues with taste and smell will be distressed by tasting new foods, unwilling to try new foods, sometimes due to smell. A lot of times we think that it's just due to the taste. I will tell you, as a major sensory food person myself, that sometimes it's just the smell. If I smell it and it doesn't smell good, I'm not even going to attempt to taste it. Doesn't notice strong smells such as paint or markers, or skunks. I've met people that don't smell skunk at all. So sometimes that would bother us, but it doesn't bother them. So you can have both ends of the spectrum with anything in the sensory system. You have people that are over responsive and you have people that are under responsive. Some kids can gag or vomit with certain smells. And we have some kids that want to smell everything before they use it. So like you give them a new pencil, they're going to smell it first and then use it. That's just, they're a highly sensitive nose, and they need to do that. So with proprioception is how our body is, where our body is in space. So it's how our brain identifies that and where each body part is in relation to each other. A good thing to see if your kiddo has issues with proprioception is have them close their eyes and point to body parts. So close your eyes, okay, point to your knee, point to your shoulder, and see if they can do that, because you should be able to do that with your eyes closed, because you have that internal feel of where your body is. If you can't do that, then you know that there's some issues with their proprioceptive system and how it's processing. So that information that you get to tell us where our bodies are comes from the muscles, the joints, and the tendons communicating with our brain. The kiddos that have difficulty with their proprioceptive systems are sometimes put too much pressure on things or too little pressure on things. So you see this sometimes when they're writing. Our kiddos that you can barely see their writing because they're not putting enough pressure, or the ones that are ripping the paper because they're pushing so hard that they're putting too much pressure through things. So being able to grade that pressure is really hard if you don't have a good grasp on your proprioceptive system and where your body is in space. Another thing, chewing on objects. That chewing is very heavy work for the mouth, and it's very calming to a lot of kids. And so you will see some kids, especially when they are anxious or stressed in this situation, maybe chew on objects or it's a new situation. And some do it out of habit. So it really varies. I have a son that used to chew on his shirt all the time when he was younger. So plays too roughly with others. So these are the kids that are very well-meaning, out on the playground, may just be a little bit rough when they play with their friends. So, because again, they can't grade that pressure on how much is, too much when they're playing. So they may come across sometimes as aggressive, but that may not necessarily be their intent at all. It's just that they can't slow their body down to be able to control their movements like someone whose proprioceptive system is fully functioning. The vestibular system, this is a system that the information comes from our inner ears, and it informs our brain where we are in relation to gravity. So am I off the ground? Am I close to the ground? These kiddos that have difficulty with this have difficulty with their balance sometimes, because balance is very connected to your inner ear. You can see this kind of vary in kids sometimes, because if we have an ear infection, they may be a little bit off because it's putting pressure on the fluid in those inner ears, and that's where the system stems from. And so we have some kids that certain times of the year, like, hey, they're a little more uncoordinated in the spring. Well, their allergies are really bad and they have a lot more ear pressure then. And so it can change their ability to do this, to function with that system. Some more severe cases are your kiddos that get car sick all the time, even on short drives. I've worked with a lot of kids on that when I did outpatient work, and just working through their vestibular system, because any kind of movement would make them sick too, even if it was a short term. So just depending on how dysfunctional the system is. These are the kids that tend to move a lot when they're seated, because they just need that feedback of where they are. So they'll fidget in their chair a lot more than most kids. Poor balance and coordination is obviously another hallmark of having difficulty with your vestibular system. And then some of the kiddos are the kids that just kind of prop up against the wall, or when they're sitting, they're on their desk or using their hand for support because they're just trying to like balance themselves in space. So you'll see that as well. Tactile. So the signs of the differences in tactile this is just our skin taking in our, the touch that we get, and it can include, and our skin is our biggest organ. So obviously it has a lot of nerve endings. Some of us are more sensitive to touch than others. Just that's how we're made. So these are some of the issues we see when there's a dysfunction in the tactile system, is feeling distressed by certain clothing, certain textures of clothing. So these are your kiddos that will not wear jeans, or only wear this one brand of athletic shorts, or doesn't like to wear socks. So all of those things can really bother them. They can sometimes overreact to accidental touch. And this is another times when some of our kids may look aggressive when they're not. If somebody were to like brush past them, they just overreact and, will push or push that person out of the way. And so then it looks like aggression when really it's just their response to having like a high alert tactile system. Then we have the under responders who don't register pain, which, obviously is a safety concern. These are the kiddos that will cut themselves on the playground and not even notice it. So, or fall down and really, hurt themselves, but because they just don't have that pain threshold that the rest of us have, you have to kind of watch them for safety precautions if it's to that level. And then these are also the kids sometimes that have food on their face after they eat or saliva on their face and they don't feel it. You or I, it would probably drive us crazy that it's there, but they under respond to that tactile system and they don't feel it the way that you or I do. So they have to be reminded to check their face, look in the mirror after you eat, wash your face off, all of those kind of things, because they're not feeling it the way that you and I would feel it. And I will say, as a caveat, so obviously we're all sensory beings, and we all have what I would call sensory preferences. So we have things that we know about ourselves that we do and will not do just based on our sensory systems. And that's kind of part of what we do with OT is teaching a kid to know their sensory system and how that affects them. So sometimes, it doesn't affect them in certain settings, but it will in others. So for example, like I don't like when I go outside and the wind is blowing. So I am almost always in a jacket or something because I don't like wind blowing on me. I don't like air condition blowing on me. So that is my strategy that I have learned in order to deal with that. So that's the biggest thing I think as OTs and as parents is just working with the kids on, what is the problem and what's a strategy that we can come up with to deal with this problem. So that's the ultimate goal is you've identified it and you know a strategy and we go from there. So with that being said, I have a few strategies for each system that I'm going to go through. Obviously each kid and situation and environment is very different. So I'm just going to give you some general ideas of things to try. And then, like I said, during the question and answer, we can definitely hone into any specific questions that you may have. So some visual strategies for the home and community. So at home, if your kiddo is very visually distracted, you may need to use like calming colors in their room. So this is not the kiddo that you want 3 different colors of walls or anything like that in their room, because that's going to distract them or make them feel like more chaotic. Simple patterns or decors on the wall. So same thing. You don't want their room to be one that has all these decorations everywhere, because that's going to be a lot for them to take in. Especially when like focusing on doing like homework or that kind of stuff, you can even have an area that is very low visually distracting if you have an area like that in your house. If you don't, that's why their room is a good choice in creating that space for them. And even some of our kids, like if they're out doing stuff with their families and it just gets to be a lot, then if they have a calm place they can go to, that's helpful. So if they need to just go to their room and calm down, the less clutter and the less things on the wall will be helpful for them. So out in the community, obviously we can't control the sun and things like that. Sunglasses are great. I know I have very sensitive eyes because of my vision. And so I have to wear sunglasses. It can be cloudy. Nobody else has on sunglasses. I have on sunglasses. So just kind of learning like where their brightness threshold is. is good. And just having those glasses to offer anytime they need them would be great, because like I said, just because it doesn't seem bright to you, it may be very, very bright for them, even if it's cloudy, but there's like still like a haze or a glow to the sky that may bother them. So having sunglasses handy is a big thing, and teaching them to wear them for that strategy. Hey, we're going to put these on because I see that you're covering your eyes or you're squinting your eyes, and these will help. So I think the younger they are, and you're seeing that issue, then add those sunglasses in. The other thing some of our kiddos have benefited from is tinted glasses, and you can buy glasses like on Amazon that are just tinted in different colors. Some kiddos like a very particular color. Like I had a kiddo that she wore like the rose colored glasses, and that was calming to her, and she could wear them in any environment, and that worked for her. And then I've had other people that have worn like a blue colored glass or a purple colored glass or a green colored glass. And it wasn't necessarily for, I know there's lenses that they look at for dyslexia as well, but it was just more it toned down the environment enough for them to be able to focus better. So those are always options that you can explore as well. Because they can wear those in stores and things like that, and it's not so dark as a sunglass would be. The other thing is to really think about when you're going shopping. If you have to go like to the mall, like go in the morning where it's not crazy and there's 8 million people there. So really kind of being thoughtful of when you're going to places, that is helpful as well. And then don't demand as much eye contact in those environments. So if you have a kiddo who is struggling to process, I'm in this busy environment, there's so much going on, there's so much to look at, and you're asking them to look at you when they talk, it may just be the one thing that sends them over the edge. So I know we work on social skills all the time, and that eye contact is important, but you always also have to think about where your setting is and when is the best time to work on that. And if you're like in a busy supermarket or something like that, where there's so much going on visually for the kid, asking them to give you eye contact on top of everything they're already taking in can sometimes send kiddos over the edge. So keep that in mind. Some hearing strategies for home in the community. So at home, you can help with the volume adjustment. Some of our kiddos like to have their volume up really, really, really high. And obviously that's something that you as a family have to work through. We can only have it to this level, and then some of our kiddos want it really, really low because it sounds really high to them. So whatever that looks like in your home environment, that's just something that you just have to work through with your kiddo and kind of say, this is our expectations. We can only have it to this level. Everybody else is going to be deaf if you turn it up that loud, or the opposite. So, and if they're working, try to choose a space without noises that will distract. So again, like the refrigerator may not be distracting to me or you, but if you have a kid that's highly sensitive in their hearing, that would be very distracting to work in the kitchen because that they're hearing that refrigerator and it's bothering them. And then in the community, so just think about the volume of the place you're going. If it's loud and they do not like loud places, what can help? So luckily in this day and age, headphones are you see them all the time. So they're not just, we use the noise canceling headphones typically with our kids, but you see the kids with the Beats headphones on, listening to music all the time. Like I went grocery shopping the other day and saw a guy pass me with headphones on and earbuds. And so I think it's, less stigmatizing today than it has been in the past. But find out what works for them. So if they do well with the noise canceling headphones, take them. Like say, we don't have to use them, but they're available. Make sure that they know that they have them. Earbuds is another easy one. They don't block as much sound, but sometimes it's enough for the kiddos. So, and then there's just the regular earplugs that you can buy as well. That works for some kiddos. So everybody has different preferences on what their kiddo, like what they like and what they want on their ears, and what they'll tolerate on their head. So that's another thing to work on, is just showing them like the headphones help when it's loud. And just knowing sometimes that they have those available is all they need. So I have several kids that don't use their headphones, but they know they're there, and that is a comfort for them. So, and then again, try and go places at less busy times of the day if you know that the loud noise is really going to bother your kiddo. Some strategies for taste and smell concerns. Obviously at home, when you're trying to get your kiddo to try new foods, don't necessarily do it during a mealtime. Do it in a snack time where it's less structured, there's less demand. The whole family is not sitting down watching this kid try to eat this food. But it's just like, hey, for snack today, we're going to try something new. It's this, so it's a little less pressure on the kid if you do it during a snack time versus a meal time. And then keep in mind preferences and smells when decorating the homes. If you have a kid that's highly sensitive to smells, obviously, candles, flowers, fragrances that you put in spaces that they're going to be in can set them off. So you just want to keep that in mind. I know for me, I love flowers. They're beautiful, but they make me, I'm so allergic. So they make me sick. And so having them in my environment is not a great thing for me. And some kids, there's certain smells that's the same thing for them. It can give them a headache. Think about any time that you've had a bad response to like a really strong perfume or something like that. That may be the response that they're having. So if you get a headache because of a perfume or something like that, you know that and you can identify that. But as a kid, they don't know. They just know I feel bad and I don't know why. And so a lot of times that will come out as a behavior when really it's just a reaction to that smell. So keep that in mind. In the community, keep preferences in mind when choosing restaurants. You want to, will they eat there, first of all? If they won't, but they can tolerate the other smells, then, you can always take your own food for them. We've done that before. But, if you have a kid that's very highly sensitive to seafood, you're not going to go to the seafood restaurant, those types of things, because that, even if they're not eating the seafood, the smell may send them over the edge. So, and then don't try to work on feeding issues in the community because there's so many other factors at play there. You're not going to make a lot of advancement in working on feeding issues when you've got the other sensory issues that may be combined in that setting. Proprioceptive strategies for home and community. So, like I said, proprioception is like knowing like where our body is in space. So heavy work is what you'll hear a lot of people say, like heavy work activities are great for kids with dysfunction in their proprioceptive system. Heavy work activities are also typically the most calming activities that we can do with our kids. I have had the occasional kid who it does ramp them up instead of calm them down, but typically the heavy kind of work activities are very calming to the nervous system. And so a lot of times we'll have the kiddos do these heavy activities. This is why, like, when kids go out for recess and they come back, they're ready to work because they've done all that heavy work outside, running, playing at recess, and then they're ready to work. So it's kind of a way to prep their bodies. At home, there's a ton of great options for this. I put just a few of them. So obstacle courses are great. That also helps with motor planning. So learning to go over things, under things, step around things, make a weave through things, all of those things, crawling. Anytime you can get a kid like down like crawling, bear walking. Those animal walks are great because it puts a lot of pressure through your joints. And that pressure helps the brain learn where their body is in space. So the more we can stimulate the joint movement and the joint impact, because that comes from the muscles and the tendons, all that information is what sends back for the proprioceptive system. So our kiddos these days spend a lot more time on technology than they did playing. And so I think we see more of a seeking and a need for this because they're just not moving as much as we did when we were younger. Other things are for heavy work is carrying in the groceries, carrying the laundry. If they're helping you cook, stirring, like especially if it's like a batter or something like that, that's really hard. That's strong proprioceptive work. Pushing or pulling heavy boxes, doing things out in the garden. There's just so many things that you can do with the proprioceptive system in the home environment to help them regulate and to help them be able to have those opportunities. Out in the community, so these are more strategies of our kiddos that, if you need to touch everything. So a lot of our kids, just their hands are busy and they're going to touch everything. So make sure if that's your kiddo to take a fidget with you and to keep them from touching other things or items on the shelf. I have a son who has very busy hands. And I remember taking him to a store once and he was just touching everything. And I said, "You need to stop." And he said, "Mom, I'm telling my hands to stop, but my brain will not tell them. Like I'm trying to tell them, but my brain is not telling them to stop." So know that before you go and take something for them to do. Like here's your fidget. You can touch this, but we're not going to touch everything on the shelf. Obviously, in this day and age with post, all the COVID stuff, we don't want them touching things anyway. So even more reason to have your own item for them to touch. And then we have some kids that like to put things in their mouth and are chewers. So, take a chewy necklace, or if they are older, have them chew gum. And so, because a lot of times they'll, put stuff in their mouth and not even think about it. But if they have the ability to chew gum, that's another good strategy. But some of our kids do wear the chewy necklaces so that they have that available when you're out in the community, because again, sometimes you see that more when they're stressed, and they may be stressed more so out in the community than they would at home. So just make sure that you have those things available if they need them. Vestibular strategies for home. So again, there's a lot of vestibular things that you can do. I just put a few on here: jumping on the trampoline, bouncing on a yoga ball. Some of our kids love to hang upside down off the couch. They don't get a lot of that inversion upside down play, but that some of the kids seek that, and it's really good for their systems. If they are struggling vestibularly, they will not want to go upside down because that is hard and scary for them. But it's good for our systems to be able to move in all planes. And so that's a fun one to do, like hang upside down and reach for puzzle pieces. I've done it like over a ball. They go back over the ball and reach for a puzzle piece and sit up. And so you're getting like good core work and you're getting that vestibular thrown in. That's always a fun activity, especially with the littler kiddos. Our older kids sometimes really like rocking chairs. If you have like a recliner or just a basic rocking chair that rocks forward and back, can help calm. I will say with vestibular movement, the forward and back plane, like where you rock this way, is the most calming. Side to side's a little more alerting. And then if you spin, that is the most alerting. So if you have kiddos that are spinning, they're just revving their systems up. So trying to get them to stop spinning and jump, or, go back and forth on a swing or something like that, is more calming to their nervous system than allowing them to continue to spin. Because again, we have overreactive vestibular systems who, if you spin them 2 times, they're going to throw up. or you have the underreactive ones who could spend all day and their system's not registering it at a level that you or I would. So there's extremes on every sensory system. So in the community, visit a park with swings or merry-go-rounds. Merry-go-rounds are very hard to find. There's like 2 in Frisco, I think. I was the kiddo at recess that spent most of my time on the merry-go-round because I needed that input. Our kids don't get that input these days, which I know it's a safety thing, but it's also, we're missing out on a piece of our sensory needs. So swings are another great thing. Again, those are not at a lot of parks because, again, safety wise, people get kicked, people get hit. But those are great things for kiddos that need that type of movement, is to find a park with those things available for them so that they can get the movement from slides and the movement from the swings and the movement from the merry-go-round to really help regulate their system. Running at a park is good, hiking is good, any of those kind of things where they're active and moving. So some tactile strategies for home in the community. There's a ton of tactile play activities out there, shaving cream. Some kids don't like messy play at all. So those are our like tactile avoiders. They don't want to touch things that are gross or a certain texture. Sometimes we start with that in the bathtub because then they can just wash it off pretty easily. They have easy access to water, but it's a good kind of segue into starting them to be able to tolerate those softer textures. Beans and rice, people have seen, scooping the beans and rice and pouring the beans and rice. Putty's great, Play-Doh's great. Anything where they're having to use their hands and touching different textures is good. They have those Orbeez beads that you can put in water that will expand, that are real weird feeling, just as long as you don't have a kiddo that's going to eat those. But there's a ton of sensory play stuff out there. Tons of ideas on Pinterest for tactile play. So really there's a limitless amount of things that you could do for those things. For our kiddos that don't like certain clothing, if there's something you really need them to wear, like we're going to this wedding and we're going to have to wear this outfit, trying them to wear them for non-preferred activities for a short period of time while they're doing a preferred activity. So say, okay, this kiddo loves watching Dora. And so while Dora's on, we're going to wear our wedding outfit. And as soon as the Dora goes off, we're going to take it off. So just working on, sometimes if they're that severe, you have to work through, we're going to work towards this goal. I worked with a little girl and she, when I was an outpatient and during my therapy session, she wore her Halloween costume for over a month because her mom really wanted her to wear her Halloween costume that year. And every year before, she gets it and she loves it and it's cute, but she is not putting it on. And so that was something that was important to the family. And so we worked on it during our therapy time, is while you're with Miss Sarah, you're going to wear your Halloween costume. And come Halloween, she was able to do it. She went and she trick-or-treated because she knew, like, okay, there's a set time limit. And when this time limit is over, I can take it off. And so I think that's really important for kiddos when you have something that you really need them to wear that's not their preferred thing. You can work on that. But definitely that's something to do at home where they feel safe and secure and you don't have all the other issues going on. So in the community, just make sure you have them dressed in their preferred clothing for more stressful environments, because you don't want that to be added to their stress. And those are the main strategies that I had down for the presentation. And then I know people will probably have questions, so I'm happy to field those at this point. Kimberly.